The giant leader appears. The night sky burned with strange colors above the ruined city. Towers lay broken. Smoke rose like black fingers into the air, and the streets were silent. Humans were still trying to rebuild after years of endless war. Every day they worked with fear in their hearts, because they knew the aliens could return at any moment. On this night, soldiers gathered near the old government hall. They had received a message. Someone important was coming. No one spoke loudly. Whispers spread through the ranks like cold wind. They said an alien leader had arrived, and not just any leader. She was the one they called the Giant Queen. Daniel stood among the scientists waiting inside the hall. He was not a soldier. He was a researcher, thin, with tired eyes and hands always stained with ink. But tonight he felt something heavy in his chest. The soldiers around him adjusted their rifles nervously. Daniel could hear one mutter, "If the rumors are true, she can crush a tank with her bare hands." Another replied in a shaky voice, "She's taller than 2 men, 8 feet or more, glowing eyes, skin like stone." The great doors of the hall creaked open, and silence fell like a hammer. Then she entered. The alien leader was unlike anything Daniel had ever seen. She was massive, her head nearly brushing the tall ceiling lights. Her skin shimmered like dark silver under the glow, her hair long and braided with metal strands. Her eyes burned golden, sharp and full of power. She walked slowly, but each step made the soldiers grip their weapons tighter. Her presence was not only physical, it was heavy, like the air bent around her. The commander of the human troops stepped forward, his voice forced and loud. "State your purpose." But the woman did not answer him. Instead, she turned her gaze toward Daniel. Daniel froze. His breath caught in his throat. Out of all the people in the hall, her eyes locked on him. Her stare felt like fire, yet not filled with hate, more like searching, as if she recognized him even though they had never met. The soldiers began to raise their rifles, but she raised one hand, tall fingers stretching out like steel. The soldiers stopped instantly, not because she had ordered them, but because fear crushed them in place. The hall became so quiet that Daniel could hear his own heartbeat. Finally, she spoke. Her voice was deep, layered with echoes, yet strangely soft. "I am Saraxa," she said, "leader of the Exovar people." Her voice rolled through the hall like thunder. Some soldiers flinched, others took a step back, but she was not yelling. It was simply the force of her presence. The commander swallowed hard. "Why are you here?" Her eyes never left Daniel. "I came, not for war, but for change." Those words made the hall tremble with confusion. The soldiers exchanged shocked glances. Scientists whispered to each other in disbelief. How could a leader of war known for destroying cities stand here and speak of change? Daniel felt his throat dry, but against his fear he found his voice. "Change?" he asked, his tone shaky but curious. "What kind of change?" For a moment, Saraxa did not reply. She slowly lowered herself into a half-kneel, her massive form folding down so her eyes were closer to his level. It was an act no one expected. The soldiers gasped. An alien leader bowing in front of a human. Impossible. But Saraxa's golden eyes burned with something deeper, something broken. "My people made me a weapon," she said slowly. "They changed me, shaped me, forced me to lead their wars. I came because—" She stopped, her words hanging heavy in the air. "Because I can no longer hold myself together." Daniel's skin prickled. He did not fully understand. But something in her tone, in her eyes, told him this was not a trick. She was powerful, yes, dangerous beyond measure, but she was also wounded. The soldiers were still tense. Their commander shouted, "She's playing with us, don't listen." But before he could finish, Saraxa's body gave off a strange shimmer, like a ripple across her skin. Her hand trembled just slightly. Then she steadied herself again, standing tall, but Daniel had seen it. He realized something was wrong inside her. That moment stayed in everyone's mind. The great alien leader, the giant warrior, standing there not as a monster but as something broken. Daniel felt his chest tighten with a mix of fear and strange pity. He could not look away. She was terrifying, yes, but for some reason he could not explain. He wanted to know more, and when Saraxa's eyes locked on his again, there was no anger. In them, only a single silent request: help me. The dangerous meeting the next morning, the human council gathered inside the old government hall. The air smelled of dust and metal. Soldiers stood at every corner, their weapons loaded, ready to fire at the slightest wrong move. At the center of the hall, behind reinforced glass, Saraxa sat calmly on a wide metal chair built especially for her size. Even seated, she looked taller than most men standing. Daniel walked in quietly, carrying a tablet and a small case of tools. His chest felt heavy with nerves. The commander, General Rourke, stopped him near the door. His voice was sharp. "Stay focused, scientist. She's not a guest, she's a threat." Daniel nodded but said nothing. He knew the danger, but something about Saraxa's golden eyes from the night before haunted him. She had looked at him not like prey, not like an enemy, but like someone who carried a secret pain. The soldiers opened the gate and allowed him inside the glass chamber. The sound of the door closing behind him echoed like thunder. He was now alone with the giant alien leader. Saraxa did not move at first. She sat perfectly still, her long hands resting on her knees. Her silver skin glowed faintly under the harsh white lights. Daniel swallowed hard and forced his legs to move closer. "You returned." Saraxa's voice rolled through the chamber, deep but softer than last night. Her head tilted slightly as she studied him. "Most men would not dare to face me again." Daniel kept his voice steady. "I was ordered to study. You to ask questions, to learn why you came here." Saraxa's lips curved into something like a faint smile, but it did not reach her eyes. "And what do you believe? That I came to destroy you? To enslave you?" Daniel hesitated. His training told him to stay neutral, to gather data. But curiosity pushed him forward. "I believe you didn't come for war," he said quietly. "I believe you came because something is wrong." For the first time, her golden eyes flickered with surprise. She leaned forward, her massive form casting a shadow over him. "You saw it, didn't you?" she whispered. "The cracks in me." Daniel nodded. His fingers tightened around his tablet. "I saw your hand shaking." She breathed deeply, her chest rising like a mountain. "My people made me a leader, but they also made me a prisoner." Her voice grew low, heavy with emotion. "They changed my blood, forced their science into my body. I was created to be more than them, stronger, larger, unbreakable, but inside I am breaking." Daniel's heart raced. He wanted to ask more, but he could feel the soldier's eyes watching through the glass. He leaned slightly closer and lowered his voice. "Then why tell me? Why not tell the council? Why me?" Saraxa's golden eyes locked on his again. Her voice trembled for the first time. "Because when you looked at me yesterday, you did not see a monster. You saw me." Daniel's throat tightened. He opened his mouth, but before he could reply, the door slammed open. General Rourke entered with 2 officers, his face hard as stone. "Enough of this nonsense," the general barked. He pointed at Daniel. "Step away from her. She's manipulating you. That's what these creatures do." Saraxa rose slowly to her full height, towering above them. Her presence filled the chamber like a storm. The soldiers raised their rifles, aiming directly at her chest, but Saraxa did not attack. She raised her hands, palms open. Her voice was calm. "If I wanted to kill you, you would all already be dead." The chamber went silent. The soldiers froze, fear mixing with doubt. Even General Rourke clenched his jaw, unsure how to respond. Daniel's pulse thundered in his ears. He stepped between the rifles and Saraxa, surprising everyone. "Wait," he shouted. "She's not here to fight. She's telling the truth. She's dying." The room erupted with voices. Soldiers whispered, officers argued. The general growled in disbelief. "A trick, all of it. Don't listen." But Daniel's eyes stayed fixed on Saraxa's trembling hands. He knew the truth when he saw it. She was more than a leader, more than a weapon. She was someone begging silently to be saved. Saraxa lowered herself again, kneeling inside the chamber. Her voice carried a strange softness. "You asked why I came here, human," she said. "I came because only your kind can do what mine never will. You can change me, you can set me free from this prison inside my own blood." Daniel felt the weight of her words crush into him. He had studied alien DNA for years. He knew what She was asking. It was not just research, it was risk. His hands shook slightly as he realized the choice before him. General Rourke slammed his fist against the glass. Daniel, do not listen to her. Walk out now before she poisons your mind. But Daniel could no longer look away. Syraxa's eyes glowed faintly in the dim light, filled not with hatred, but with something he never expected to see in a war leader. Hope. The meeting ended in chaos. The general stormed out, soldiers arguing in hushed tones. But Daniel remained behind for a few moments longer. Watching her, Syraxa whispered one final word before he left, a word that echoed in his mind long after he stepped outside. Help. The secret of her blood. The night was quiet, but Daniel's mind was not. He sat in his small research room, lights dimmed, his hands shaking slightly as he looked at the sealed case on the table. Inside it were blood samples taken from Syraxa. Earlier that day, he had promised himself he would only make surface observations, just simple scans. But curiosity was burning inside him. He tapped the screen of his tablet. The scanner lit up, red lines moving across the sample. At first, everything looked normal. Alien DNA had its own patterns, complex but understandable. Daniel had studied dozens of species before, but after a few seconds his heart began to pound. The screen filled with twisting chains that looked unstable, fragments splitting and rejoining unnaturally. It was like her DNA was fighting itself, trying to break apart. The pattern repeated again and again. Collapse. Rebuild, collapse, rebuild, Daniel whispered under his breath. This shouldn't even be possible. He increased the magnification, and what he saw made his chest tighten. Human-like strands had been forced into the alien code, not naturally, but through brutal experimentation. The bonds were unstable, as if Syraxa's body was constantly tearing itself apart just to stay alive. Daniel sat back in shock. They made her into this, he thought. His fingers tightened on the edge of the table. He understood now. Syraxa wasn't just a leader. She was a weapon her people had created, twisted and broken from within. Suddenly, the door to his lab creaked. Daniel jumped to his feet, quickly shutting the screen. But when he turned, his breath caught in his throat. Syraxa was standing there, her tall frame filling the doorway. Even bent slightly to enter the room, she seemed massive. Her golden eyes glowed faintly in the dark. You looked, she said, her voice low, calm, but filled with weight. Daniel froze. He wanted to deny it, but there was no point. Yes, he admitted softly, I saw what they did to you. She stepped inside, the floor groaning under her weight. The shadows of her long figure stretched across the room. For a moment, Daniel thought she might crush him for his intrusion. But instead, she lowered herself, sitting carefully on the floor so her eyes were closer to his. Her voice trembled. Then you know my truth. I am not a leader by choice. I am a creation. My people twisted me into their perfect weapon. But in doing so, they cursed me. Every day, I fight against my own blood. Daniel's throat was dry. How long? He asked. How long have you been breaking like this? Her eyes shifted away, glowing faintly. Since the day they crowned me. Since the day I became their symbol of strength. Her voice grew heavy. I cannot show weakness to my people, or they will tear me apart, and I cannot beg my enemies or they will kill me. So I came here to the only race foolish enough to try the impossible. Daniel blinked. The only race foolish enough? You mean humans? Syraxa looked back at him, and for the first time Daniel saw a faint, fragile smile. Yes, your kind never stops reaching beyond its limits. Sometimes you succeed, sometimes you burn, but you always try. That is why I came. Daniel leaned forward, his mind racing. Your DNA, it's collapsing. If this continues, you'll... He stopped himself, the word too heavy to finish. I will die, she said for him, her massive hands clenched against her knees. Slowly, painfully, my body will break down until nothing remains. That is my future, unless... Her eyes locked on his, burning bright. Unless you help me. Daniel felt his breath catch. The weight of her request pressed down on him. He wasn't just a scientist anymore. He was the only lifeline for a dying leader. The soldiers would never allow this, the council would never approve. And yet, looking at her, he knew he couldn't walk away. "I don't even know if it's possible," Daniel admitted, his voice shaking. "Your DNA is so unstable, any attempt to fix it could kill me faster." Saraxa finished. Her tone was calm, almost fearless. "Then let it. At least I would die trying, not waiting." Silence filled the room, broken only by the soft hum of the machines. Daniel stared at the screen again, at the impossible patterns twisting in the sample. He knew every second that passed brought her closer to collapse. "Finally," he whispered, "I'll try." Saraxa leaned closer, her golden eyes reflecting the dim light. "You are either the bravest or the most foolish of your kind," she said softly. "But I choose to believe. You are both." Her words sank deep into him. His heart pounded as he realized what he had agreed to. Altering the DNA of an alien leader, risking not only her life but his own. If he failed, humanity might pay the price. But if he succeeded, that night. As Saraxa left the lab quietly, Daniel stared at the glowing strands on his screen. His hands trembled, but his eyes burned with determination. For the first time in his life, he wasn't working on just science. He was working to save someone who should have been impossible to save. And deep in his mind, one thought refused to leave. Maybe, just maybe, this wasn't about saving her body alone. Maybe it was about changing everything her people believed, the humans' risky plan. Daniel could not sleep that night. He sat alone in his lab, the glow of the DNA scanner lighting his tired face. The strands of Saraxa's blood twisted endlessly on the screen, breaking and rebuilding like a puzzle that refused to stay whole. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her, towering, proud, yet fragile, whispering that one word, "Help." But how could he help? Altering alien DNA was dangerous. Even in controlled lab tests with minor species, results were often fatal. And Saraxa was no ordinary alien. She was 8 feet tall, her body enhanced, her blood filled with violent science. If he made a mistake, she could die, or worse, transform into something uncontrollable. Still, Daniel's mind refused to rest. He opened the human database of genetic codes, searching for anything that might stabilize her DNA. Hours passed. His eyes burned. But then, something clicked. Human DNA had one quality unique among known species. It was adaptable, resilient, capable of bonding with alien strands more easily than most. If he could carefully blend stabilizing sequences into Saraxa's collapsing structure, he might buy her time, maybe even rebuild her fully. The thought made his heart pound. It was reckless. It was forbidden, but it was possible. The next day, Daniel went to the council chamber. Soldiers and officials were arguing about what to do with Saraxa. Some demanded her execution before her people declared war. Others argued she should be locked away forever. Daniel listened in silence until he could no longer hold back. "I can save her," he said, his voice cutting through the noise. The room went silent. Dozens of eyes turned toward him. General Rourke glared with disbelief. "Save her? Are you mad? She's an enemy leader." Daniel stood firm. "She's not just a leader, she's a prisoner of her own body. If she dies, her people will use it as an excuse for war. But if she lives, if she changes, it could mean peace." The council erupted again. Laughter, anger, disbelief. The general slammed his fist on the table. "No one touches her. Do you understand, scientist? This is not your lab experiment, this is survival." Daniel clenched his fists. He knew they would never approve, so he made his choice in silence. He would act without permission. That evening, Daniel entered Saraxa's chamber with a small case. Hidden under his coat, Saraxa sat quietly, her massive figure bent forward as if weighed down by invisible chains. When she saw him, her golden eyes softened. "You decided?" she said, not as a question, but as truth. Daniel nodded, his voice low but steady. I have a plan. It's dangerous. It could kill you. Her lips curved into the faintest smile. If I wanted safety, I would not be here. He placed the case on the table and opened it. Inside were small vials filled with glowing liquid, stabilizing agents combined with human DNA strands. If this works, he said carefully, it will bind with your unstable chains. It could stop the collapse, give your body a new balance. But once it starts, I can't control what happens. Saraxa leaned closer, her huge shadow falling across him. Then let it happen, she said softly. Better to risk freedom than live as a weapon. Daniel's hands trembled as he prepared the injector. The machine hummed softly, lights flickering. He looked up at her. If this fails, they'll blame me. They'll kill me before your body even cools. Saraxa lowered her head. Her massive hand reached out, gently resting 2 fingers against his shoulder, a gesture that was both alien and strangely human. Then we risk it together, she whispered. The weight of her words struck him. For the first time, Daniel didn't feel like a scientist facing a subject. He felt like a man standing beside someone who trusted him completely. He pressed the injector against her arm. The liquid glowed as it entered her bloodstream. For a moment, nothing happened. Then her entire body shuddered. Her skin flickered with light, glowing patterns racing across her arms and neck. Her breath came in sharp gasps. Daniel's monitors screamed warnings. Her DNA was reacting violently, twisting against the new code. Stay with me, Daniel shouted, typing commands desperately. His hands shook as he adjusted the stabilizers. Don't let it break you, Saraxa roared, her voice echoing through the chamber like thunder. The soldiers outside rushed to the door, weapons ready. But Saraxa raised her voice again, through pain, through fire. Stay back. Only he can save me. Her cry shook the walls. The soldiers froze in confusion, none daring to move. Inside, Daniel was drenched in sweat. He pushed the system harder, sending more stabilizers into her blood. Her skin cracked with glowing veins, her eyes burning brighter than fire. For one terrible moment, Daniel thought she would explode into light. Then, silence. The glow faded, her breathing slowed, her massive frame collapsed against the wall, shaking the chamber floor. Daniel rushed to her side, scanning her vitals. His screen flickered. The unstable pattern was slowing. The collapse had weakened for the first time. Her DNA held steady. Daniel let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. His body slumped, exhausted. But Saraxa's golden eyes opened. Slowly, softer than before, she looked at him with something new. Something close to wonder, I feel. Different, she whispered. Her voice cracked, but it carried a quiet strength. Daniel's lips trembled into the smallest smile. It worked, at least for now. Saraxa reached out with her massive hand and brushed the air near his face. Careful not to touch too hard. You risked everything for me, she said. Why? Daniel looked at her, truly looked. Because you asked, he replied simply. And for the first time, the giant leader of the HFY people lowered her head in gratitude to a single human. Transformation begins. The chamber was silent after the first injection. Daniel's chest still heaved from the rush. His tablet showed stable readings for now, but the process had only begun. The real test was yet to come. He knew her body would keep fighting, her blood rejecting and accepting the changes again and again. Saraxa sat against the wall, her huge frame trembling slightly. Her golden eyes flickered as if flames burned inside. She looked at him with strange calmness. This is only the first step, she whispered. Her voice was tired but steady. My body will not accept this easily. Daniel nodded, his hands tightening around the injector case. I'll stay with you, through all of it. Hours turned into night and the storm inside Saraxa began. At first it was small, tiny shivers running down her arms. Then her skin lit up in glowing patterns spreading like fire through her veins. Daniel's monitors screamed warnings as her heartbeat raced and her oxygen levels dropped. She gritted her teeth, refusing to cry out. But the pain twisted across her face. Her deep voice shook. It feels like lightning tearing me apart. Daniel leaned closer, adjusting the stabilizers. Your body is rejecting the changes we have to push through. Her massive hands dug into the stone floor, cracking it. Push harder, human, she growled, sweat glowing on her silver skin. I will not break. He increased the feed, his heart racing. The DNA strands on his screen shifted wildly, colliding like storms. For every chain that stabilized, another broke apart. It was chaos. But then, slowly, pieces began to connect in new ways, forming bonds that had never existed before. Siraxa screamed, her voice echoing so loudly the soldiers outside grabbed their rifles. The commander shouted, "Open the door! He's killing her!" But before they could force their way in, Siraxa's voice thundered through the walls, shaking the chamber itself. "Stay back. Only he can save me." The soldiers froze, fear in their eyes. Even the commander stepped back, his jaw tight with disbelief. Inside, Daniel's breath came in sharp gasps as he fought to control the process. "Stay with me, Siraxa," he shouted. "Don't let it win!" Her body convulsed, her silver skin glowing bright like molten metal. For a terrifying moment, she looked less like a living being and more like a star about to explode. Her massive form shook violently, then collapsed forward onto her hands, her face near the ground. Daniel rushed toward her, scanning her vitals again. His screen flickered. The collapse rate was slowing. The stabilizers were taking hold. The impossible was happening. Siraxa's breath came ragged, her voice low. "It is changing me." Daniel placed a hand gently on her arm, the heat of her skin almost burning. "Yes, your DNA is rewriting itself. This is the transformation, but it's dangerous. You have to hold on." For hours the process continued. Her body, lit with glowing veins, her hair shimmering as if threads of light passed through it. Her voice rose and fell with cries of pain and strength. Daniel stayed beside her, refusing to leave, adjusting, guiding, fighting against the collapse with every ounce of knowledge he had. Finally, as dawn broke outside, the glow faded. Siraxa's massive form lay still on the floor, her breathing slow but steady. The monitors showed balance for the first time. Her DNA had stabilized, not perfectly, but enough to survive. Daniel collapsed to his knees, his body weak from exhaustion. He looked at her, unsure if she would wake. His chest ached with fear. What if he had saved her body but lost her mind? Then her golden eyes opened, softer, brighter than before. She lifted her head slowly, and Daniel saw something he had never seen in her before. Peace. She spoke in a hoarse whisper. "I feel lighter." She looked down at her hands, opening and closing them slowly. Her scars, the deep lines carved into her arms by years of experiments, were fading. Her skin looked smoother, her strength controlled instead of wild. Daniel's throat tightened. It worked, at least for now. Siraxa looked at him for a long moment. Then, with surprising gentleness, she reached out her massive hand, cupping it near him as if protecting a fragile flame. Her deep voice broke softly. "You gave me back something I thought I lost long ago. Myself." The soldiers outside banged on the door again, shouting, "Open up! What happened in there?" Siraxa's eyes narrowed, and for the first time Daniel saw not rage but resolve. "Do not open it," she commanded. Her voice carried authority again, but this time it was different, not forced, not heavy. It was natural. Daniel stood, wiping sweat from his face. "They won't understand," he whispered. "Not yet." Siraxa nodded slowly, her golden eyes glowing softer. "Then let them fear while we continue, for this is only the beginning." Daniel looked back at the scanner, at the strange hybrid strands now forming, a mix of alien power and human resilience. The transformation had begun, but it was far from complete. He knew this was only the first battle in a war inside her blood. And as Siraxa leaned against the wall, her huge form finally at rest, Daniel realized something terrifying and beautiful. He hadn't just changed her DNA. He had set into motion a new being the galaxy had never seen before. The new being. Chamber smelled of metal and ozone after the long night. Machines hummed weakly, some broken from the overload. Daniel's eyes were red with exhaustion. But he couldn't look away from her. Siraxa lay still, her tall frame stretched across the floor like a fallen statue. For hours she had battled the storm inside her blood, and now silence filled the room. Daniel's tablet beeped softly, showing new results. The collapsing chains were gone. The DNA had formed a stable pattern unlike anything recorded before. Not alien, not human, something new, he whispered to himself. It worked. She's alive. As if answering his words, Siraxa stirred. Her massive chest rose with a deep breath. Her golden eyes flickered open, but they looked different. Brighter, softer, alive in a way he had never seen. She slowly pushed herself up. Her hands pressing against the cracked floor, Daniel stood quickly. Careful, don't push too hard, you've been through. But then he stopped. His mouth went dry. Siraxa was rising with ease, her movements smooth, balanced, not heavy, and strained like before. She stood taller than ever, but her presence felt different. The heavy weight that used to press down on everyone in the room was gone. She looked down at her arms, slowly turning them. Her scars, those deep, jagged marks that had carved her silver skin for years, were gone. Her skin shimmered, clean, her muscles firm but graceful. She flexed her fingers, marveling at the way they moved. I feel, she whispered, her voice trembling with awe, alive. Daniel stepped closer, scanning her vitals again. The readings were strong, steady, not fighting against themselves anymore. His heart pounded as he realized it. This wasn't just survival. This was rebirth. Siraxa turned her golden eyes to him, and for the first time there was no mask of power or pain. There was only wonder. What have you done to me, human? Daniel swallowed hard. I didn't just fix your DNA. The human. Code bound with yours, it created a new pattern, stable and strong. You're not what you were before. Her brow furrowed. Not alien. Not weapon. Her voice grew quiet, filled with disbelief. Then what am I? Daniel hesitated, his voice soft. You're something new, something that has never existed before. A bridge between two worlds. A bond beyond species. The council chamber was full the next morning. Soldiers lined the walls, officers whispered to each other, and the air was thick with suspicion. Everyone waited for one thing, news about Siraxa, the giant alien leader who had once been their greatest fear. Daniel stood in front of them, his chest heavy with nerves. He knew the truth of last night, but he also knew he couldn't reveal everything. Not yet. If they discovered how deeply she had changed, they might panic. They might try to kill her. General Rourke's voice cut through the noise, sharp as a clearsome scientist. What progress have you made with the monster? Daniel hesitated, then answered carefully. She's stable. The treatment has slowed the collapse, but it's still ongoing. She needs time. The general narrowed his eyes. Time is dangerous. Every second she lives, her people may see it as weakness and strike. The council erupted in debate, shouting for war, for execution, for peace. But Daniel barely heard them. His mind was still in the chamber with Siraxa, watching her golden eyes as she whispered, a new being. Back in the chamber, Siraxa sat quietly, her massive form resting, but her presence different now. When Daniel returned, she looked up at him, her golden eyes glowing faintly with warmth instead of fire. They want me dead, don't they? She asked softly. Her deep voice carried no anger, only quiet certainty. Daniel sighed, setting his tablet on the desk. They don't understand what you've become. All they see is the weapon you used to be. Siraxa lowered her head slightly, the faintest trace of sadness in her eyes. And what do you see, Daniel? He looked at her for a long moment, then spoke with honesty. I see someone worth saving, someone who can change more than herself, someone who can change everything. For a moment, silence filled the chamber. Then Siraxa did something unexpected. She leaned forward and bowed her massive head, lowering it until it almost touched the floor before him. Daniel froze, his breath catching. What are you doing? Her deep voice trembled. I was born a leader, forced to stand above all, but for the first time I kneel by choice. Not as a weapon, not as a ruler, but as someone who is free. Free because of you. The sight struck Daniel's chest like thunder. This towering alien, 8 feet tall, feared across galaxies, was bowing not to armies, not to councils, but to him, a single human. He stepped closer, his voice breaking softly. "Saraxa, you don't need to kneel to me." She lifted her golden eyes, shimmering with unspoken emotion. "Then let me stand beside you." At that moment, the chamber doors burst open. Soldiers stormed in, rifles raised, General Rourke leading them. His face was red with fury. "Step away from her, Daniel. This ends now." Saraxa rose slowly to her full height, towering over them all. The soldiers tightened their grips on their rifles, fear written across their faces. Rourke shouted, "Shoot if she moves." Daniel's heart pounded. He stepped in front of her, arms spread. "Stop, she's not your enemy anymore." Rourke barked, "She will always be an enemy. A monster cannot change its nature." Saraxa's golden eyes glowed brighter, but instead of anger, they carried sorrow. She stepped forward slowly, her massive hand lowering until it hovered above Daniel's shoulder, almost protective. Her deep voice rang through the hall. "Then let me prove it." Before anyone could react, she lowered herself again, this time in front of the soldiers, 8 feet of alien power kneeling on the cracked floor. Her golden eyes looked up at them, not with pride but with humility. "I am Saraxa," she declared, her voice echoing like a vow. "I was a weapon, I was a ruler, but no longer I am something new, and I choose peace." The soldiers froze, whispers spreading like wildfire. Never had they seen a leader of her kind bow, never had they heard such words from alien lips. General Rourke's face twisted with rage. "Lies, she's tricking us." But Daniel stepped forward, his voice calm but strong. "Look at her. Does that look like a trick? Do monsters beg for peace? Do weapons kneel?" The room fell into silence. The weight of the moment pressed down on everyone. Soldiers looked at each other, unsure. Their rifles lowered slowly. Rourke shouted again, but his voice no longer carried the same strength. The seed of doubt had been planted. The truth was before their eyes. Saraxa had changed. She lifted her head, her golden eyes shining. "Not by my people's hands, not by my science, but by a human. He gave me back my soul, and now I offer it not as a threat, but as a promise." Daniel felt his throat tighten. He looked at her massive hand beside his, glowing faintly with warmth. He placed his small human hand on hers, the contrast almost laughable, tiny and fragile against her giant strength. Yet it was real. In that hall, in front of soldiers and leaders, an alien giant and a single human stood together. A bond born not of fear, not of war, but of trust. The world seemed to pause, and in that silence, Daniel whispered words that carried farther than he expected. "You didn't just change her DNA, you changed her future." And Saraxa, the once feared leader of the Exovar people, whispered back, her deep voice breaking softly, "No, Daniel. You changed mine."